suppression, the use of marijuana.
I have a fun fact about Kenya.
I also have a fun fact about Kenya.
I hope it's not the same fun fact because it's the only one that I have. I did have a professor from Kenya. He was really fucking cool.
Nice.
He was my anthropology professor. It was sick.
Nice.
The only professor that I've had that was from Africa, but he didn't ever divulge which country, told us that being gay was an American problem because Africans are made to reproduce and that's all they do. And he said this proudly. And I was like, oh, honey.
Okay.
I don't like that.
No.
And it was a music appreciation class, so I don't understand.
Oh, how are you like straight and an asshole?
Well,
okay, fair enough.
were you going to tell us your fun fact or were you
I'm
waiting?
saving it.
Okay.
Okay.
I was like,
I'm also saving my fun fact.
cool. I had a thought in the car on the way here because I have restarted listening to music in between books instead of just going book.
Oh, good for you.
Because I needed my brain to learn how to hold in the information of the previous book before jumping into a whole different world.
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to whatever song, I don't know what it's called, and in it has like the vocals get mixed, and so like it's not her natural voice the whole time because they do something with the little knobs and shit.
Mm-hmm.
But I was wondering if it's an ADHD thing or if it's just Tia, because that always needs to be clear.
Of course.
When I'm singing along with the song, as soon as the mix happens, I start to replicate the mix.
Oh yeah,
I do
no,
that.
100%.
Cool. Okay.
I was actually just thinking about something very similar. So when I listen to Hamilton
Oh yeah.
and I'm singing along, I sing it like each person sings it.
You adjust
yeah.
it to
Yeah,
mimic
so
what
like-
the-
No,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so Lin-Manuel Miranda's really nasally, but then George Washington is like very like
Chris Jackson.
Chris
Wow, I
Jackson.
summoned that from like 7 years ago.
But he sings like very like it's like the back of his throat and,
Okay,
and
yeah,
like low in his jaw,
Mm-hmm.
and Lynn is like up
Yeah.
in his
Oh
nose.
damn.
I
Okay.
mimic
And so
everything that I sing. I'm mimicking whoever
Yep.
I am mimicking.
That happened to me at Spreetail too. There would be like Southern customers who would talk, and I was like, I can't break this because they'll think I'm making fun of them. In
Yes.
actuality, I didn't even know that I suddenly had a Southern accent.
Correct.
So,
Mimicry is a very common thing with autism
TISM group.
and ADHD, but
It's all a spectrum. It's fine.
yeah, it's like the protecting yourself by blending in.
Oh yeah, that's how we math so well.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for validating me.
You're welcome.
Anyway, do you want to just start?
Yeah.
Cool.
Hello, I'm Jamie,
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Tia.
and we're the ADHD Queens.
Woohoo.
Woohoo! So I'm hosting this month, and we read A Grain of Wheat by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. So this is for Kenya, and yeah. So a little bit of background about this book. This was written by him in, 1967. And it takes place it jumps around
Yeah.
historically speaking. But it takes place in the rebellion, the Mau Mau rebellion, of Kenya. So they are obviously, because, white people really fucked up Africa.
As
They
have
were
continued to do.
continue to do. They were a British colony from 1920 until 1963. And so this is taking place after independence, so after 1963, in like real time. But then we also jump back. We do some flashbacks to the state of emergency called because of the Mau Mau Rebellion between 1952 and 1959. So,
okay.
yeah, so the rebellion itself takes place during that time. The state of emergency is put in place. So that does a lot, and we do see it throughout the novel of we see a lot of like restrictions placed on these people, and a lot of, I mean, obviously mistreatment by the white people, but also just there's a lot of like just it was sort of like shut down. Just everything was completely shut down because of this rebellion. So the majority of this takes place, I mean, the entire book is taking place surrounding the rebellion and the state of emergency and things like that. So the during and also the repercussions of after.
Yeah.
And he actually wrote this. Let me see. There was like it was a Heinemann African Writers series. Like there was like I don't know, an organization that came together that grabbed like a whole bunch of African authors and just got their stuff out there. And he was in university at the time and he wrote this. Yeah. So
Holy crap.
yeah. And this is his first novel, I think. Yeah, it's wild.
Okay.
Damn. What
Like,
have we done?
I know, seriously.
I had 2 kids,
You
Yeah,
did.
That's
You did.
valid.
but that's also much easier than a novel.
I sure wrote a novel, and it's not doing anything yet. But, you know.
One day.
And also, I wasn't in college when I wrote it.
Right.
Yeah, so anyway, brief summary of what happens in this book. So it is taking place during this rebellion, and we are leading up to the Independence Day celebration, the Uhuru celebration. We also do some flashbacks, seeing how this village is involved in whatever is happening. So the main players here, the main character his name is Mugo, and he was involved. Well, there were detention camps that during the state of emergency, like all of the men were taken to. Just like every dude was just taken out, put in the detention camps. And he became a little bit of a hero, sort of by accident. He just sort of found himself with this following.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks he is so impressive, and he kind of didn't do a whole lot, or not intentionally.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of stood up for this woman once, and everyone was just like, wow, that was incredible.
Yeah, it was just kind of like weird place, weird time.
Exactly.
And
He
just
didn't-
happened to be places.
He just happened to be in places when things were happening. So he is the main character, and things just keep happening to him. People keep telling him how great he is and how important he is. And people tell him their entire life story. Just because he just sits there and nods and he doesn't really know what to do with it, but they think he is very wise. So the beginning of the book starts when he is asked to speak at Uhuru as like the most impressive figure in town.
Right.
Because
Surviving one.
yes, he is the most impressive surviving figure in the town. And specifically, we are introduced to the idea of this man named Kahika, who he is really a hero figure in this entire novel. He is a resistance fighter who is very famous. He killed the district officer who was brutalizing everybody. So everybody loves Kahika. He is a national treasure. Well, not quite national. He is a regional treasure. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. And Mugo, it is thought, saved him. Like he had come into contact with Mugo and everybody knew that. And it is thought that Mugo had protected him from harm. And then very shortly thereafter, Kahika gets caught and executed. We find out fairly quickly-ish that Mugo, in fact, was the traitor, and Mugo did not protect his secret, and in fact, went to the authorities. So this entire book is sort of Mugo understanding that, like, coming face to face with the fact that everybody thinks he's this huge hero, and in fact, he is actually the traitor, and he goes through it. Some of the other players involved are Mumbi, Kahika's sister. So she's a pretty big part. Her husband, Gikonyo, is also sort of involved in the resistance, and he gets taken for 6 years, I want to say, in the detention.
Right.
He's taken for 6 years. He is the first in the camp to confess that he took an oath. So that is a big thing. Oathing, I kind of read a little bit. I couldn't get a lot of information on this, but like oathing is like, was big in this rebellion, was like to, state your allegiance to the rebellion, and you took it very seriously. And he's the first one to crack. But he is always thinking about Mumbi. He loves her. He loves her very much. Mumbi is Kahika's sister, married to Gikonyo. And when he comes back, he finds her pregnant, or not pregnant. He finds her with a child who can't be his because the child's like 1 or 2. And that leads us into Karanja, who is another major player. He also around at the same time, he knows all of these people at the time of the rebellion. He knows Kahika, and he is in love with Mumbi at the same time that Gikonyo is in love with Mumbi. But Gikonyo kind of woos her first, and he spends his entire life very upset by this. And entire life. At this point, he also becomes chief of the village. He joins the
White people.
He joins the guards, and he becomes chief eventually. So, mistreating his fellow people, all to stay in town for Mumbi's sake. And the only reason, so she does become pregnant with Karanja's child, literally just because Karanja tells her that Gikonyo is coming back. And she gets so excited that her husband is coming back that she falls into Karanja's arms, and then they have a baby. So there's a very dramatic subplot of Mumbi and Gikonyo not seeing eye to eye, and it's very dramatic.
I definitely was super uncomfy with that.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't great.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm so excited, let's fuck. It was more
Oh, yeah. It was...
assault.
He took advantage. He took way advantage of her, like
icky.
he had wanted to for so long.
Forever.
But then Gikonyo comes home and does not even kind of investigate. He just thinks that she cheated on him, and he's just grumpy forever. So,
there's a lot of mental issues.
There is so much that people need to work through here. The other fun thing about Karanja is that nobody likes him because he became chief, and he also was on the side of the white people. And in fact, everybody knew that Kahika had been betrayed, and everyone thinks it's Karanja. So, remember, it's Mugo. Everybody thinks it's Karanja. So, as we are leading up to the Uhuru celebrations, Gikonyo and some other people have decided that they are going to execute Karanja, aka the supposed traitor of Kahika, at these celebrations. Publicly in front of everybody.
He
So
still should have done it, but whatever.
he didn't actually do
But he
it.
still killed a bunch of people.
Oh yeah, no, he sucks.
Yeah.
But so this all leads up. We go through a lot of drama. We see everybody's backstories, which leads us up to, and Mugo goes through a lot of different cycles of how he feels about this because
Yeah.
I didn't get the quote. I meant to type it down, but there's a bounty on Kahika's head
Oh, yeah.
when he is. So Kahika has come to him. He like made a pit stop in Mugo's house, and Mugo is like just staring at him, and Kahika's like, "Ah, rebellion, yay!" And let's talk later. Let's make a meeting or whatever. So everybody knows that Mugo and Karanja were the two people who had meetings with Kahika that day, and everyone's like, "Well, it has to be Karanja because Mugo wouldn't, because Mugo's great." So he then learns about the bounty on his head, on Kahika's head, and he goes and he turns him in. And this is correct, so he gets this money. And he's like going through this whole thing once he's thinking about like, when I get the money, I will be good with it and I will take care of the village and I will put the money for Kahika's head to good use, and that's what makes me a good person. And he, at various times, he like gives someone like $1 or something, or, the equivalent. And he's like, I survived so that I could do this one good thing. He's trying to like rationalize it to himself.
The cognitive dissonance is
It's
so real in this book.
It's wild. And then he, at the end, like right before the end, he decides, yes, I will go speak at Uhuru. And then Moonbi comes in and like reveals her whole life story. And then he's like, oh no, I'm a bad person. And then he says, actually, I won't speak at Uhuru. Well, I'm going to take pass on that. So the morning of Uhuru finds him alone in his house, kind of stewing, and everybody else kind of ramping up to assassinate Karanja. And when we get to the moment where they're going to announce this, basically, there's a character called General R who has just been like, he's very passionate about the rebellion and Kahika. And he is the one who is speaking, and he says, I'm going to, I want the person who betrayed Kahika to stand forward right now. And everyone's sort of like staring daggers at Karanja, and he's like, what's happening? But then Mugo comes out of the crowd and says, I did it. I was the one who betrayed him. And nobody goes to grab Mugo because everyone is so confused and astonished. So he just goes home. He just turns around and walks away.
So does everyone else.
And everybody just sort of
Everyone
breaks
does.
up. Everyone's like, what?
It's a very I'm Spartacus moment, except for he is Spartacus, and then nothing happens.
Yeah, and then nothing happens. It fizzles out. Everybody goes home.
They don't even do like the official ceremonies
No.
or sacrifices. They're just like,
They just leave.
okay.
And then the book ends with Karanja leaving town because he's like, well, they were all super willing to kill me. So I'm getting out of here. So he leaves. Moonbi and Gikonyo are sort of like trying to patch things up because they were both pseudo-therapized by Mugo, even though he didn't do anything. He literally just sat there as they both told them separately their life stories.
Yeah.
And then they both just realized stuff, but they thank Mugo for that. And then, if I remember correctly, I did finish this like a week ago. It ends, the elders from the town do show up and tell Mugo that they do have to put him on trial for this.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's in private.
Yes,
It's
they
in
are not.
private.
They are doing like a way keyed down version of what they were. They weren't even going to put Karanja on trial. They were just going to hang him, just in the town center. And now they're like, oh, we need to, because it's Mugo, because we love Mugo. Mugo can do no wrong.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too. When it ends, it kind of ends without you for sure knowing what happens to Mugo.
Oh, yeah.
Because they just talk about him not being there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
So you just don't, it's all up in the air. It's kind of like, well, that was fucked up, right?
Damn, we just went through it.
And then, yeah. So that's the plot. First impressions.
For me, it jumped around a lot, and listening to it, there was no like when you're reading a book, there's like the lines across the page that say like, okay, this is like a new thing that we're talking
Yes.
about. Listening to it, that's not there.
That is
doesn't
correct.
happen at all.
There's like a little bit longer of a pause than normal, but it's just still a pause. And
Yeah.
so I was so confused.
Yeah.
Once I figured it out what we were doing, it got easier throughout, but
Yeah.
I was very confused. I honestly, she kind of sucked, but I wanted more of Mugo's aunt.
Oh yeah, she sucked.
She
Yeah.
really sucked. But then at the end, when he like sees the old lady in
Yeah.
the hut, and he's like, "Oh, I'm thinking now about my aunt and how everyone that I knew and loved is dead,
Yeah.
and this old lady thinks that I'm her son because she's old and dying," and it just was sad. So she sucked and she died, but I kind of wanted there to be like a redemption arc. For
Oh,
that.
yeah. Oof, there
There's not.
weren't.
Just kinda
There's
hoping for a
definitely
little too
not.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone else didn't have one.
But yeah, just the jumping around for me was a lot. But
Yeah. I had a hard time right at the beginning because you just jump in and everybody's names are just tossed at you.
Yep.
So I like right at the beginning I was so confused, and then I just wrote down everyone's names in my little note thing that I have, and once I had everyone's names, actually I went to the Wikipedia and I wrote down everybody's name from the character list. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, these are going to be the important ones. And I just took my notes there, and then just next to everybody's names, I was like, okay,
Right.
this is the one. Once I saw their names, then I was able to be like, okay, this is
That's
that.
valid.
This is then.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is there. But like when they just like tossed, and like there was like Koandu or something who was like, yeah, you're looking confused. That's because he's mentioned like for 1 second at the beginning. He's just with General R in the first meeting.
Yeah.
And he shows up like maybe once or twice later. He's listed in the character list. So I was just waiting for him to
Become
become a
something.
thing. He's not.
It's like
He's literally
what's
just
his
a
name?
resistance fighter.
Cthulhu, I think it's his name. It's something with a G, but like he's literally
Oh.
just like the town crazy.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
just like he tells everybody like, "Oh, they blew my leg off in the war," and no, they didn't.
He,
like
he
just
had an accident,
yeah,
but it was like believable. But anyway,
yeah.
um,
So once I got the list of the names, and I could see, because I'm a very visual learner, once I could see the names as they were saying them, I was like, I got this.
yeah,
And I could follow. Once I had that down, I was really interested in where we were going.
sure.
yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, it technically said in the audiobook that I was like 30% in, but I think I recognized earlier that I wasn't actually listening when I was listening to the audiobook, because the first thing that I remember is like the first paragraph, because I went and re-listened to the beginning again. I remember that first chunk of information about Mugo and him meeting the people. And then I remember Thompson is preventing someone from throwing a rock at a dog.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
That is the next spot where I'm like, oh, this is a thing that happened. And then that's when I got my list of characters, because I was just like I was on the same page. Was just not able to keep tabs. But once I got that settled, then I was like, oh, this is just really, really complex.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And like,
This is not an easy, just let it listen. You have to
No.
like pay attention.
and like
that's-
all the
yeah.
interweaving drama, like there's so much going on everywhere.
Yeah, and then there's like partial reveals, but then we go back again and you get the full story. And
Yeah, Mumbi's story for sure is
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, there's no way that it was just her like fucking around. Like
No,
there's
no.
no way. Like
Yeah.
And so I figured something had happened. I figured that it was like a lot more aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
but also it doesn't matter how aggressive, it's still awful.
It was kind of like in Why I Killed My Best Friend, when it's like, oh, that thing that happened.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
yeah.
keeps telling you the thing,
Yeah.
the thing, and then it never really like gives you the whole thing until,
All of a
Until,
sudden
like,
you
oh,
have
it-
the whole thing.
and it's awful.
The thing that once I got past the first like interaction with it, I was able to really appreciate just how, although it was very jumpy, it did remind me of like when I start writing. Like if I were to write a story, it would jump from one person's perspective and then suddenly this
Yeah.
person got brought up, so I'm going to start talking about their perspective. And then it does that, and it just keeps doing that. But they were able to bring it full circle.
Mhm.
I would have never been able to do that.
I was really impressed that I felt like I knew each character's personality.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like
Yeah, definitely.
he did such a good job with like every character is so vivid where like even if I wasn't really paying attention to who, you know, like I
Exactly,
get
yeah.
distracted. We all have ADHD. And like if I wasn't really paying attention to who was in the scene, if I just like heard how people were talking, I could tell who was there.
Right.
And yeah, that's always very, you know, I read a lot of books with a lot of characters, but it's like when the characters are that vivid, I'm always very impressed.
I think it was partially like I usually give that to the person who's reading it, the narrator, which they did. They did a great job of differentiating their voice, but I really do feel like this one, the author did a great job of like making you understand who was who and the like how complex they were.
And not even just like the way that the author or the narrator reads, but like the way that each character talks.
Yes,
you know,
they had a
it's kind of
specific- yeah.
yeah. It was just like it was really well done, I thought.
Right, for a university
I
student?
know.
What are you talking
I know.
about?
Well, and like I don't know how old he was when he was in university. I guess
That's
I could
fair.
figure that out, but like still, like not super old. Let's find out.
And I feel like at least at that time, non-traditional students were not really a concept quite yet.
No, right.
So he was most likely in his early 20s.
Oh no, he was 30.
What?
But still.
I'm so proud of him putting it out there for
No,
the
seriously.
30-year-olds. We can still do stuff.
Oh, and this was his first novel, but oh no, it's not. It was his third novel.
Okay. Still
But still.
impressive.
Still impressive.
very
His
impressive.
first one was when he was 27.
Okay.
So still. I'm
Jeez.
32. So
31.
yeah.
Don't-
But
I'm cutting that. No one needs to know that.
But yeah, and the, you know, he did a very interesting job with the rebellion. And there was like a lot of pieces. He didn't say outright, these were the conditions for the state of emergency. But
Yeah.
he showed the conditions for the state
Yes.
of emergency so well. And there was a point at which I didn't really understand what he was showing us. And then when I was doing some of the Wikipedia looking up, I realized, oh, that was like a thing. It was called villaging, I think.
Oh, when
And-
they were transforming the,
Yeah.
the old villages into the new
Yeah, they
versions?
basically, there's a point in the book where Mumbi is telling, well, when she's telling Mugo about, you know, the time that he was away, because he was also away in the detention camps for so long, she's telling him about when they had to move and build their new homes in 30 days.
Yeah, and then they would burn down.
And then they would burn down the old
regardless
home.
if they had gotten
Yeah.
it done. Yeah.
And it's just like, what? Ah.
Yeah.
But then it was told in the course of just like, you know, she's just telling stories about like when she was talking to whoever,
Right.
you know, there was like a whole story about like the different men that were walking past and like what she was saying to them as they were building this house. And so she didn't really dwell on how insane that concept is.
Right, because that was their experience. They
Because
had
she
no
was just
other-
like, oh, you know, when we had to build our entire new house.
when we were all in the trench just digging,
Yeah.
digging away and getting our asses beat.
Yeah, you know, it's just,
And they had to like move the entire village. It like the village started in one place and ended like completely in a different spot.
yeah.
The whole town.
Yep.
And then what I also found interesting was, so they clearly interwove all of the people of the village, but then they also brought in some white perspectives. And it's just so alarming because they're just talking about like, this is our normal thing. Like, we're just in charge of black people, and like, they don't have any reason to fight us back. And
And-
why aren't they being more submissive? What's
yeah.
going on? I was
And
like,
being like, they were like scared of what
what
a
it would be
black a black led Kenya. It's like, this is where they live. You
Right.
came here.
I was like, if
So-
anything happened, it would be your fault.
It would be your fault, 100% your fault.
The character, I can't remember what her name is. I think she's a professor. And
Oh, the doctor.
yes,
The
doctor, and that one with the dog is
Yeah.
the same-
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
She
Dr. Rain?
she
R-A-Y-N,
definitely-
Yeah,
or
something like that.
showed off the perspective of someone who is blatantly ignorant to anything other than the culture that they came from,
Yeah.
and trying to like put it in another spot and expecting it to be the exact same situation. And I was like, you're not fully in reality.
No.
No.
And then, like-
none of them were.
No. Those white
Thompson
people.
and his wife, fucking weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I appreciated the like, we entered their brain as
Yeah.
things was happening. Is that omniscient?
I mean, technically, this is an omniscient
It's like the
because, well, I feel like the frame story said I sometimes.
it said
occasionally.
it said we. It was
It,
very.
it was sort of,
So
it
it's like
kind of
first person
implied,
omniscient.
it's
but-
sort of
which is
implied
weird.
that it's from the perspective of someone living in the town, but
Yeah.
like does not say that
At
ever.
all.
So I
Yeah.
think technically, if you ignore those few points where the narrator's like me, I think it would be omniscient, third
'Cause,
person.
yeah,
Yeah.
you enter people's minds and you know for sure they're not like, you wouldn't, if you were Mugo, you would have no clue. Or if you were the elders
No,
who
right.
were talking to Mugo and he's just like freaking out, and they're just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
like,
He just, oh my God, my favorite part about Mugo is that like the thing that made everyone like so impressed by him was his speech that he accidentally gave when they all came back, and like they're all back from the detention center and everyone is having emotions and everyone is kind of like doing these speeches, and he does a speech where he starts off and he's like, I just wanted to come back for the women and mothers, and then he stops because he thinks to himself, I don't got a wife. My whole family's dead. Like, what am I even I didn't even want to come back here. And so he's like pauses to have these brain thoughts, and everyone is like, he was so moved that he couldn't even keep speaking, and everyone's crying, and everyone tells him like, oh, that speech really did it for me. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
it really it really played up the whole, people will make you whatever they want to
Oh,
make you.
Absolutely.
As long as you don't fight them back on it.
Yeah.
And like he couldn't say anything or do anything without it becoming this heroic act.
It's-
Yeah. And even when he did fight back, it was just like, oh, he's so
He's being humble.
Oh my God, yeah. Or like at the end when he came out and said I did it, somebody was like, he's so brave. It's
Yeah,
like,
no, they all said that. They
Oh
were
my
like,
God.
oh, wow, he has so much guts because he was able to admit this thing.
yeah, but it's like if Karanja came out and did that, everyone
Oh.
would be like, kill him.
Stab
You
him.
know, like it. I
Because
just
it's Gaconio. Yeah, Gaconio brings it up when he's in the hospital because of his weirdly
Oh.
broken arm.
yeah. He and Karanja get into like a very childish race.
which is a
Yeah.
replication of an actual
Of an
race
actual
when they were
race.
children.
Yeah.
But Gaconio brings up like he thinks it's admirable that he could admit to something so terrible, which I could understand that perspective because he was being outright praised by all
Oh,
of these people. So
absolutely.
of course that had to like, if you had a conscience, it would beat you down. So I could see why that was admirable, but like the people, I feel like they were so accustomed to having absolutely nothing that they were just grasping at any kind of positive straw that they
Yeah.
could get.
That's
Which,
fair.
fair. They all have PTSD and
Absolutely.
there's no therapy set up in this time period.
Mm-mm.
So I was just like, damn, you poor people. Like, this is going to impact you for generations.
Yeah.
Yup.
Generational trauma.
Yeah. The only other thing that I really felt a lot of confusion but also just intrigue with was whether or not Mugo had some sort of like extreme mental disorder from the beginning because of his abuse with his aunt, because the way he readdresses everything is so jarring. Like he goes from like one personality to a completely different one in like seconds. And I don't want to say it because I think it's personality, like a split personality disorder. I don't think it's schizophrenia, but I keep wanting to say that because I get those two confused. But just a major mental disorder because, well, I mean, trauma, but like he's trying to process this and he just really seems like he can't.
Yes.
And even at the end, when he talks to the old woman, does he murder her?
So,
Because they do say she's dead at the end.
I was not sure if he straight up murders her. He causes her death, almost certainly.
Right, like,
and I wasn't
couldn't
sure
tell
if he, I wasn't sure, because we don't see anything happen. I didn't know if he maybe, like, he went at her aggressively, so I don't know if he just, like, scared her and she got a heart attack, because she wasn't murdered, I don't think. Everyone just says that she died.
Right.
Yeah.
So
but
there
they
was
don't
no
know that Mugo went to her
Nobody knows that
house.
Mugo was there. So I'm guessing that he like scared because she doesn't have bruises. She doesn't,
Yeah.
you know, she's not stabbed. She's not. I'm wondering if he
Sure.
like gave her a heart attack, basically.
That's
I-
fair.
I guess I didn't interpret it as like him causing her death because he comes in and she thinks that he's her son
Uh-huh.
who is there to take her away.
Correct.
So
And
maybe
then-
she like let go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
That's how I interpreted it, but I guess
I thought that
be-
he did because he got really mad at her.
Right, because he wasn't
he-
able to distinguish her from his
He was
aunt.
seeing
aunt.
his aunt there. Sorry, I'm from Massachusetts, so I say aunt. But
Damn Northeastern.
there's a U in that word. But you know, he has this sort of breakdown where
Right.
he's seeing her as his aunt and he gets really aggressive with her very quickly.
Right.
And then we cut and then we find out that she died. So that to me said, I guess that he maybe not even intentionally. I don't even think he intentionally did it, but I
Right.
think he just
but
got
he also
upset.
did like strangle Moonby.
He
and-
did try to
tried to
strangle
strangle
Moonby. Yeah.
That's where I was like, okay, so he's clearly a disconnect in there. So
Yeah.
that's where I was like, there's a possibility that he just doesn't know what he's doing because when he was thinking about Kahika when he was in his house,
Mm-hmm.
he kept going back and forth between being scared and wanting to kill him.
Yes. Yep.
So I was like, damn.
Yeah. And like the whole thing is like he turned in Kahika's the one he turned in.
Mm-hmm.
He turned him in because he wanted to protect himself
Yeah.
because Kahika killed an important person.
Right.
And then he says he's going to do these good things with the money, but then when he's actually turning him in, he says, I don't even want the money.
Yeah. Yeah, he
And
does.
He
doesn't
does.
He?
He's like, oh, I don't even want this. Like, what am I doing? So there might be, there's got to be some sort of disconnect from reality.
Right, because that's all before. I was going to say maybe it's because of the detention center, but this is all before the detention center. So that's why I was like, okay, maybe the trauma from losing his parents and suddenly his aunt, who's super abusive and kind of creepy,
Yeah.
starts to have issues. So maybe he because I think what it is you are not necessarily born with your disorder, but you have the
Yeah.
ability to have it triggered.
Predisposition.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so that's why I was like, well, maybe he just happened to have that. And then all of these series of events led to him just losing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the fact that he could admit that he had messed up, I was like, that's at least part of you was able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But damn.
Kahika's sister
Moonby.
is Mumby.
Yes. There's also a brother that's younger, but I can't.
Who does he tell first? He tells two different people that he was the one who turned in Kahika.
Oh, he tells Moonby first.
Moonby first, and then
I didn't think he told anybody
I thought
else.
He told someone else.
He only told Moonby, and because he spent the next day thinking like she knows, Moonby knows. Oh my God, Moonby knows.
Yeah, he was convinced
Yeah.
that she was going to tell
Gonna
everyone.
tell everyone.
And then
But
I don't know.
I don't think he told anybody else.
I'm just imagining things.
That's fair. This whole book was kind of like that.
Yeah.
There was so many situations where they would all have visions and they would see really terrible things happening to people. I think Karanja had it happen at the train station.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where like
Oh, the
I
train
thought
was
for a second,
fascinating.
I thought for a second I had missed something. I had to like
Yeah.
go back, and then it's like, oh no, actually that was just like
Because he
yeah.
imagined pushing someone in front of the train or someone falling in.
He
front
imagined
of the
like some sort of
train.
like battle happening.
Yeah, something
He-
happening because there was people running away. And
Yeah,
there
there was
Yeah.
like and
bloodshed? I don't-
somebody had fallen in front of, and he didn't save them, I think, or something
Okay.
like that.
It was
Really dramatic.
wild.
Yeah, I thought the train was kind of a fascinating like symbol.
They kept going back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why? Because I don't.
So okay, no, you go.
So it was foretold that a giant metal snake or serpent or something like that
Oh, the
would like
prediction.
would like
Okay.
bring ruin on them.
Mhm.
And so then there's this train which is
a giant
metal snake.
Yeah.
Is there, and so they're fascinated by it, so they keep going back to watch it.
Yeah.
And then but it's also like almost a symbol of like their oppression, because then once the rebellion like really gets going, people eventually stop going back to watch it because it's like the snake is the white men.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And we're tired of that.
I-
So they like stop going to
Yeah.
it.
But before it kind of just becomes like a thing to do.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
You
also,
know, like
yeah.
a fun thing to do, even though
Right.
it like the beginnings of it sort of start as like a thing.
like a prophecy.
But then
sort
they're
of
like-
situation.
Oh, time to go watch the train. Let's all go watch the train.
Yeah. And
That's
one time they're like running late, and so they like run to it.
Yeah, they
and-
like book it.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And that
That's
is
how
that is the
Mumbi
race.
and
Yeah.
Gikonyo-
Yeah.
Because Karanja, so Gikonyo, and this is when they're young, in their like late teens, I
I
think.
think something.
Yeah.
like that.
They're
I think
all
it said like 16.
Yeah, yeah. So they're all hanging out, and they're like, "Oh no, the train! We got to go!" And so Mumbi stays back because she needs to grab something, and Gikonyo and Karanja are like, "Oh well, I'm just gonna wait for her. It's super chill, but I'm not in love with her or anything. It's fine." So then she's like, "Okay, I'm ready. Let's go." And it becomes kind of this race between Karanja and Gikonyo, and they're both like running so fast. And then Gikonyo starts to fall behind, and then he realizes, wait, I'm alone with Mumbi. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, okay, this is fine. So he goes back with Mumbi, and they actually like go out and they have sex in the field or whatever.
Yeah.
But Karanja is like booking it, and he is going, and he is pumped. He's like, I'm winning Mumbi. And then he turns around when he gets there and is like, wait a second, I left Mumbi with Gikonyo. Very silly.
Yeah.
So then when they race later,
end.
they're racing sort of, you know, as a callback to this race, and also to try to win Mumbi, even though Mumbi hates you, Karanja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is also really pissed off at Gikonyo. So it's like,
Yeah, it said like in her little narration during that, it was like, I wanted Gikonyo to win and I wanted him to lose.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And I was
She was like,
you know what? You're so
she was
valid for
having
that.
a time with that. And then he fell and hurt himself, and she like runs up to try to take care of him, and then she was like, wait, we're fighting,
yeah.
but then it's fine.
Yeah, he falls and breaks his arm, but as he's falling, he also brings down Karanja.
Yep.
So
Which
they
I thought
both
that was
lose.
so funny. I was like, I love that. I love that neither of you won, because that makes so much more sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
also,
y'all
y'all
are
are
fucking
children.
Yeah. And it is literally a foot race for the children.
For children. There are children in this foot race. And Gikonyo and Karanja are like, no,
Oh,
this is
and-
about me.
And Mumbi like writes to Karanja and is like, hey, they're all gonna kill you. Don't come to
well,
this thing.
she doesn't specify why. She just says, don't come tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
And then
he's
he
like-
comes anyway, and she's
Because
like, why
he's
did he
so
come?
stupid,
Because
though.
he's like, oh, she wants me.
It's like, why?
It's like,
how does that?
What's wrong with you? So much is wrong with him.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. His narration focused so much on like how much he needed the white power to stay in place. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude.
Because he had ingratiated himself with them.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's like, I don't care if this is bad for literally everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
he's like, it's
because-
like a keep your enemies close
Yeah.
thing
But he
because he like
thinks-
wants to be friends with them because he's so afraid of them.
Well,
Yeah.
And then
that and because
it gives him power over the other black
yeah,
people.
and he like specifically said that he went through all of this for Mumbi.
Yeah.
He says that he literally did this. He got himself in with the white man and he became the chief and he did all of this so he could stay here for Mumbi. And Mumbi hates you.
Yeah. Who is
My
it? I
dude.
think it's his mom. I think it's his mom.
Gikonyo's mom?
No.
Or Karanja's
Karanja's
mom.
mom.
Yeah.
Tells him don't like harm your fellow person.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, okay. And then he goes and like murders and
Yeah.
tortures and does all this crazy stuff.
Whatever.
And I'm just like, maybe you should have listened to your mom and maybe.
Does your mother know? Does your mother know?
Get some ABBA in here.
Another thing that I distinctly remember was so in the race it's Gakonya, Karanja, of course, and then it's General R.
General R, yeah.
And then Lieutenant something.
Mhm.
He's a lieutenant though.
Mhm.
And he's the only one who like pauses and thinks everything is going to really change and like we're going to have to figure out how to establish like a government and how to make
Yeah.
it work and how to be okay because suddenly we're losing all of this stuff. And I was like, at least someone thought about it because everyone else is celebrating, which is fair.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. You have freedom again, especially after being tortured like for 40 years. But you also have to remember that if you burn a government down, you got to put something
You got to put
up
something
in
else.
place.
Yeah. To quote Lin-Manuel Miranda,
Mm-hmm.
winning was easy, young man. Governing's harder.
Truth.
True.
The other interesting fun fact. Oh, we didn't even get to your
Oh.
fun fact. We have to get to my fun fact. But
Okay.
first, I'm going to say not a fun fact, but an interesting fact. So we mentioned Jomo throughout this book.
Yes.
Do y'all know who that is?
No, I meant to
so
look him up.
he's a real life
Yes.
guy.
I got
So
that
that's a
much.
historical thing. He becomes the first president
Oh.
of Kenya.
Oh,
Also,
okay.
his administration was absolutely full of corruption, and he stole a bunch of money. So that
Nice.
didn't go well. But he was
So-
well loved as a revolutionary before that happened.
Great.
So he would like the people who burn the government down should maybe not be put in its place.
Correct.
Got it. What's your fun fact?
My fun fact is that the national bird of Kenya
Is a flamingo, which was also my fun fact.
I do love that though.
I
'cause I would not imagine a little.
I didn't know
Pink
that's where they
bird.
come from. Apparently, it's from Kenya. So I didn't
Damn.
know that, and I was this afternoon. I had looked a little bit into the rebellion and stuff, but then I remembered that we were recording tonight, and I was like, "Oh crap! I have to know a lot more about the rebellion and dates and stuff." So I said out loud that I was like, "Okay, well, I got to look through. I got to learn a lot of stuff about the Kenyan rebellion and independence." And Drake must have just heard me say I need to learn a lot about Kenya because he was like, "Do you know?" And I was like, "No, I don't know anything about Kenya. I just know about the rebellion." And he was
Yeah.
like, "Do you know what the national bird is?" And I said, "No, because I don't know anything." And he said, "The flamingo." So that's the only thing. He did tell me a couple other fun facts, which I have since forgotten, but I remember the flamingo thing.
That's fantastic.
I was worried that was going to be your fun
I also
fact.
was worried about it, but I'm glad we said it together.
That was very cute.
That's great. The only way you can really summarize this book is there's just like so much chaos because everything they went through was so chaotic. that
Yeah.
The author did such a great job of putting that into a book.
And putting it into such personal stories too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Very personal.
this was all happening. Like he didn't just tell you what happened.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
showed it through every single one of these people.
Yeah.
It reminded me, in like the way that you're describing it, reminded me a lot of the people of the book.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
yeah.
Oh,
these,
sure.
like, I mean, in the people of the book, obviously, it's all just like in the main character's head, like thinking about what could have happened,
Sure.
but
sure.
it was still like so personal to each.
Yeah.
Got you.
person,
Yeah, I see
and-
what you're saying.
Yeah.
There was another book I knew I should have written down. There was another book that I was thinking of just because of like how complex everything was, but now that doesn't make any sense because I don't remember the book, so never mind.
That's okay. You're
Word.
valid.
Yeah. I wrote it down, so of course I don't remember it because it's no longer in my brain. But I do remember distinctly writing down concentration camps repeatedly
Mm-hmm.
because of the descriptions of all of the detention camps, which they specifically were like, which were just concentration
Yeah,
camps.
they absolutely
Yeah.
were concentration
And I was
camps.
like, okay, so but that's when I had to figure out the time period because they did reference back to World War II
Mhm.
Yeah.
and them fighting for the British and all of that. And I was like, so they just took the idea
Mm-hmm.
and rolled with it
Yes.
because they were black.
Kind of like America.
Kind of
Oh,
like America.
With the
the
Japanese
Japanese
internment camps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yup.
Mhm.
We haven't forgotten.
Nope.
I think some of you.
Living memory. There are people still alive.
Yep.
George Takei.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Queer icon.
So true.
Yeah.
On that note,
Let me
That's
try
the
to remember
world.
some other things. Anywho's.
Okay, so
So next month I will be hosting me, Ryan, this person.
the more mask
Who?
presenting voice.
And
sorry, have we met?
No. What? Sorry, you said have we met? And there's a song or an album that's titled "I Don't Believe We've Met," and now I can't remember who
I don't have an
sings
answer.
it. And I just remember seeing like an ad on YouTube that's like, "Hi, I'm blank, and I don't believe we've met." Anyway, not
Would you
at
like
all.
to introduce us to the next book?
Yes. Anyway,
Do you have
so
the
me,
date?
Ryan, the day is
September
Oh.
24th.
That's why I opened my phone and then I started looking at other crap.
I do
Same.
that too. Cool.
So hi, my name's Ryan, and I will be hosting next month on September 24th. It's a Tuesday, same as always. The book that we will be reading is Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel, and that is for Mexico.
Is it a really well-known book, or
Yes,
is it
and there's
just
also a
book I
movie
know?
and also a play.
Okay.
Question
was
mark.
like-
It's only like 5.5 hours long.
Oh, nice. Because
Yes.
we need a shorter
Short
book.
one. Because my other
Yes.
choice was for the Czech Republic, and it was 11 hours, and I was like, how about
we can
no?
wait. We can hold on to that.
And
one.
it's my birth month.
And it's your birthday.
It's gonna be my
month.
birth month, so that's why I'm hosting, because we host our birth months.
Yay. Okay. See you next time.
See you next time.
See you next time.
The suppression, the use of marijuana.
This podcast was brought to you in part by KCUN
Yeah, we could say that.
Please tell me you recorded that.
89.3 FM, KCUN.
Perfect.